The three biggest mistakes ambitious and talented professionals make that keep them from qualifying and becoming top-earning business owners with a never-ending stream of ideal clients. I know how busy you are, so you'll be relieved to know that I'm going to keep this short. My name is Lisette Offley, and as a teacher and coach of over 35 years, I specialize in creating bespoke programs for business professionals like you that allow you to maximize the effectiveness of the skills and experience you have. And I'm especially interested in creating the most direct, pain-free path to success. If there's something you can do in 5 minutes that used to take an hour, and if that new way of doing things works even better than the old way, well, I'm onto it. So if you find yourself so snowed under a mountain of work, a gnawing feeling of defeat making you question if it's all worth it, or if you resent your so-called leisure time being squeezed into non-existence as you increasingly find yourself playing catch-up, or if you're maybe struggling to find the time to revise and think there must be a better, more efficient way to learn and retain information, or feel pressured to succeed, but are afraid that unless something changes, and fast, you might fail, then you probably feel there must be a better way. Well, if so, you're in the right place. Because most of us get so busy coping with everything we've got to do every day, we don't have time to check if there's a more efficient way of doing things. I've been there myself. Even when I've known there's a better way, there was just never the time to set it up, and so I continued the same old way that I was used to. And it feels like you're pedaling as hard as you can just to stand still. Oh, and if on any occasion I was obliged to get more done, the only option I had was to pedal even harder. And that's exhausting, and I know you know it too. And you start making mistakes, and you get gritchy at home and at work, and worse, clients begin to annoy you, and you think they can't tell. Short temper and sarcasm ain't good for business. You might wonder then how on earth mega successful people get through the day, and you might speculate that they have some sort of superpower. But deep down you know that given the right circumstances, you too could be very much more effective and a hell of a lot less stressed and overwhelmed. So here we go then, the three biggest mistakes that most ambitious and talented professionals make that keep them from qualifying and becoming top-earning business owners with a never-ending stream of ideal clients. And how to set up the right circumstances then so you too can be very much more effective and a hell of a lot less stressed and overwhelmed. That's right. It's not down to luck. It's down to playing smart. So mistake number 1, wasting your time and effort struggling to pass exams and get qualified. Ever seen a fly banging up against a pane of glass in its determination to fly through it? Here's mistake number 1, doing what you know and not knowing what you don't. That fly doesn't know there's a pane of glass in the way of getting where it wants to get to. Even though it can see clearly where it wants to be, it doesn't realize what's stopping it getting there. We're the same. Naturally enough, in every aspect of our lives, we do what we know. Much of what we do is habit, and we do things the way that we know how to do them. Take tying your shoelaces, for example. You've done it so many times in your life, you could do it in your sleep now. It's become such a habit to tie them in the same way, you don't have to think about it. You could even be listening intently to something of interest on the TV at the same time. After all, that's the purpose of habits. Your amazing brain has an increasing repertoire of behaviors, sort of like shortcuts, to get the mundane stuff done, freeing up your brain to do something far more interesting. And when it comes to revising for exams, once again, we do what we know. And depending on whether what we do works well enough for us, we will pass exams or not. We're all the same. If what we're doing doesn't work, we tend to do the same thing, only harder. How many of us have fallen into that trap when it comes to revising? See, the problem is that most of us do one of 4 things when it comes to trying to learn stuff, and none of them work very well at all. Are you someone who reads and rereads their textbook? Have you perhaps been told to do that by your tutor? Well, if so, you know as well as I do that it sends your brain to sleep. You know what I mean. You're halfway down the page and you suddenly realize you haven't taken in a single word of the previous paragraph. So you read it again, and again, and again, and the same thing keeps happening. Great for insomniacs, but as a learning strategy simply doesn't work. But if that's all you've got, that's what you keep doing. Maybe you're one of those people who decided you'd better get some learning advice. Maybe you went to the library or bought a book from the bookshop only to discover they're hot on how to memorize names at a cocktail party, but not so hot on how to learn the sort of stuff you get in the classroom. Or maybe a friend suggested you did what they do since it works for them. Hey, it might work for you, it really might. But what are the chances, and how long have you got to spare to find out? When it comes to learning, we've all got a lot in common, and yet we know we also do things differently. How are you supposed to know if you're the sort of person who'll learn fastest with a study buddy? And if you do study with a friend, how exactly do you do that, given how easy it is to waste time having a good old chinwag and still not have learnt anything? How do you know if you learn best by using audio tracks? And if so, how do you know if you should be listening passively or if you should be making your own audio tracks instead? And if so, what's the best way of doing that? Did you know we're all hardwired to forget? And that explains a lot, doesn't it? If you're someone who works bloomin' hard but you forget the stuff you've just learned as fast as you learn the new stuff, it's because you're normal. Reassuring maybe, but not very helpful if you're trying to pass an exam. So what with our innate forgetting skills and the large probability that you're not attempting to learn the way that your brain does that best, for many people passing an exam can be an absolute nightmare. It doesn't matter that you gave up your evenings, your weekends. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It just doesn't get you anywhere. And so in the end, you come to the conclusion you're not cut out for it and there's something wrong with you. Oh, it's all very well for other people, but at best it's going to be a mammoth task for me to get qualified and at worst impossible. A complete waste of my time and my life. Ooh, and that's a mistake, because for the sake of one little thing, you could be sailing through your exams, getting the qualifications you need to become that highest paid, mega successful individual you know you could be. So what's that little thing? Here's the fix. Fix number 1. Naturally enough, the fix is to find out how your brain learns best. There are decades of science now that tell us how human beings learn and how they forget. And there's plenty of research that tells us that while we have a lot in common, since we're all human beings, I'm assuming, there are also differences between us. But you knew that already, didn't you? The fix is to find out what works and what doesn't, and then only do what works and stop doing what doesn't. This is all about strategy, not ability. You've come across people who seem to have no problems whatsoever passing their exams, and I bet at times you've wondered what on earth they've got that you haven't. The simple answer is that they use a strategy that works, and any idiot can do that. I should know. You're no idiot. You just need the best strategy for you, so that the effort you put in stops being a slog and instead gets you the results you need, which means you remember what you learn instead of forgetting it. Oh, and I should tell you, by the way, you only need to learn 10% of the stuff that's thrown at you. Did you know that? How much easier would that make your life if out of all the stuff piled up in front of you, it's only 10% you have to focus on? That would change everything, wouldn't it? Mistake number 2. If someone you knew was stopping you achieving your goals, or worse, was making you ill, wouldn't you want to do something about it? But what if that someone was you? Your unconscious mind is there to make sense of the world and keep you safe. It makes the best decisions it can with the information it's got. Sometimes the way that it does things used to be useful in the past but is no longer relevant, and sometimes it simply made a computational error from the get-go. So what's mistake number 2? Not mastering your psychology, not using your conscious mind and your unconscious mind, the whole of your mind, the way that it was designed to work best. What do I mean by unconscious? Really, there isn't such a thing. What I mean is, you can't point at a part of the brain and say, there it is. But what I mean is the parts of your brain that work automatically for you to keep you alive. Think breathing, blinking, sweating, shivering. All automatic bodily responses. Your unconscious mind's job is to make sense of the world and keep you safe. Physiologically, we're pretty much the same as we were 10,000 years ago when we lived in caves. But you don't need me to tell you that our environments and lifestyles have changed somewhat. But we still have the same equipment to deal with our current situations as we did 10,000 years ago, when perhaps we were better adapted to that more basic existence, when the stress response popped up automatically to fight or flee from a large hungry predator. Or maybe freeze and hope it doesn't spot us. You've seen cats and dogs spring to attention, to attend to a potential source of danger, only to immediately relax again once they've assessed the situation to be safe after all. That's how it's meant to be, and was 10,000 years ago. But how many of us these days are pretty stressed most of the time? We never relax, do we? Our bodies are continually responding as though we were in a life and death scenario, when the reality is it's just traffic making you arrive late for work, or that look from the boss. 3 jobs needing to be done before 10 a.m. and the telephone ringing off its hook. Urgent emails floating off down the screen out of view, and horror of horrors, an empty coffee machine. We wouldn't be here today if the stress response wasn't a lifesaver and we hadn't evolved to keep it in our repertoire. That tells us there's some evolutionary advantage to it. And of course, the stress response doesn't half get you off the road damn quickly if there's a car speeding towards you when you're crossing it. But one of the disadvantages of being stressed all the time, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty, is that you can't think straight. You're not meant to. You're meant to focus solely on the source of danger and do something about it until it's no longer a danger. But in the 21st century, at work and at home, it just makes everything that much more difficult to cope with. You know how you operate when you're preoccupied with a worry or haven't had enough sleep. It's the opposite when you feel on top of the world. Think of those glorious moments when you feel as though nothing but nothing will knock you off your perch. You can cope with everything, you love everyone, you feel invincible, and nothing is too difficult. But if you find those moments are few and far between, then learning how to master your psychology makes the difference between success and failure, not to mention enjoying your life or having a miserable time of it. You probably already know that you can take conscious control over some of those automatic bodily processes. Breathing is the obvious one. Anytime you feel agitated, stressed, or anxious, you can focus on taking nice, long, deep breaths, and that tends to calm your body and brain down, maybe just a little bit. It's a start. But did you know that if you're feeling a bit down, forcing your face into a smile will change your brain chemistry for the better and cheer you up? Maybe you did know that. But who do you know who's willing to smile when they're feeling depressed? Maybe you've heard that if you practice a new habit often enough, it'll become automatic. It's true, it will. But that's the nature of habits. They're automatic and unconscious. It's quite hard to remember to do something in a new way, especially if you're not yet convinced it's going to be your solution. Here's an example. I can guarantee that if you stand naked in front of the mirror and tell yourself every day that you're beautiful, eventually you'll believe it. But I don't know anyone who's willing to do that, do you? What I'm trying to illustrate here is that many of us have, from time to time, taken into our heads to change our psychology. And many of us have been very disappointed with the results and have found it too hard to make the changes stick. What happens next? Remember, your unconscious mind is there to make sense of the world and keep you safe. Now it has to cope with what we call cognitive disconnect. That's to say, 2 conflicting, simultaneous ideas. In this case, I can see other people achieving success. I'm not stupid, I can do this. Versus, it's just not happening. No matter how hard I try, I can't do it. There must be something wrong with me. And then you either compensate very hard for that by overworking and overachieving and being miserable, or by playing small and safe, never taking any risks and being miserable. Not a very inspiring range of options you have there. And I know you have negative thoughts because everyone does. Hold on. If it happens to everyone, how come everyone's not struggling? If you think about it, having negative thoughts is your unconscious mind's attempt to keep its eye out for danger. It wants you to look for problems and monitor your performance so you'll stay away from trouble. And that includes the potentially dangerous consequence of someone disapproving of you, being disappointed in you, ostracizing you, abandoning you. All those horrible negative feelings that human beings avoid at all costs. So, in an attempt to keep you on the straight and narrow, your unconscious mind can accidentally make your life a misery. You're going to have negative thoughts because you're a human being. You're hardwired for it. But it's what you do with those thoughts that shapes the experience you get. Let them pass you by, and that's the end of it. Hang on to them like they mean something, and they'll worry you for a lifetime. You won't get rid of them, but you don't need to. And actually, a healthy dose of self-assessment once in a while doesn't do you any harm at all. It doesn't have to be painful because there is another way. And that is to find out what you don't know, you don't know. Instead of trying to make those changes by forcing them upon yourself and then being disappointed when it doesn't work, you need to let your brain work the way it already automatically does things best. And those changes happen instantly in the moment. Just like any time the new bit of information comes to light and you've had that aha moment that changes everything. For example, your beliefs, your actions, your results. But until your unconscious mind accepts and supports the decisions your conscious mind makes, you'll find that something stands in the way of achieving your goal. An obvious example is people who want to stop smoking. Consciously, logically, they want to quit. But the unconscious mind has obviously made a decision that smoking now is more important than being healthy in the future. How many people do you know who have tried and failed every time to stop smoking? Maybe you've tried it too. You need to use your unconscious mind to help you get better results. And by that, I mean exponentially better results across the board. So you need to understand how that unconscious part of your mind works, because then you can, of course, get it on side, give it very clear instructions, and wait for the magic to happen. And transformation happens in the moment, as long as you've got someone who knows what they're doing to help you through the process. Here's a recent client, an entrepreneur and business owner, who was somewhat surprised and delighted by the shift in what was possible for her. And as you'll hear, very quickly indeed.
I'd say before coming to the session today, I just felt like my mind was so full of clutter and just very confused and very stressful and very just, I just couldn't really cope in a way. And now, after that session, I just feel light. It's literally like the air. Somebody's just kind of taken all of that dirt that was there and just sucked it out with a vacuum, and it's just disappeared. It's not even there. It's not even floating around me anymore. It's literally just vanished. And I cannot even explain. Profound is the word I use, because it literally, I've waited years to get this feeling of how I feel right now. And yet in one session, it happened.
Fix number 2 then is to master your psychology. So the second fix is to master your psychology, because that makes everything possible at home and work. And those changes can happen easily and painlessly if you know how. And that means you can start enjoying your life now. On to mistake number 3, continuing to do things the same way, praying for a different outcome. Does your life feel so crazy that it's like being on a speeding train, hanging on for dear life? Supposing you had the skills and insight to get ahead of that train and lay its tracks in the direction you want to go. And supposing that wasn't as impossible as it sounds. Picture this. You wake up bright and breezy, already excited about the day to come. You kiss your partner, give them an affectionate squeeze, can't wait to get off to work. First stop, the coffee machine, because you've already been to the gym, you've had your litre of water and you're feeling good. Now the meeting. You catch up on what's what with your team and delegate the various follow-up activities and responsibilities to the relevant parties. Oh, and they love you, by the way. and they're keen to do a good job for you. So, all sorted then. And you've got the rest of the morning to choose what to do next. Tell you what, maybe ring a friend and arrange a nice long lunch and natter. Ah, yes, what it is to be on top of your game. That sound like your life? Want it to be? Yeah, I bet. You know, for some people, that's exactly what it looks like. You can imagine Richard Branson or Karen Brady's lives panning out like this, can't you? But for every famous, successful person, there are thousands more that you never hear about. So we assume it's a rarity and not something available to us. Big mistake, because the daft thing is, this could be you too. It's only a short step away. It surely can't be that hard. Surely you've met people doing what you want to do who really don't strike you as gifted or special. In theory then, if they can do it, surely you can too. You're watching this webinar for a start. You're obviously open to making a difference. Some of those other people just got lucky, but you won't need to rely on luck when you've got a plan. Oh, imagine how good that'll feel. That you've got a plan and it's already working. You're developing the skills and know-how, you're creating the right environment and surrounding yourself with the people who'll support and nurture you because you know who they are and you know where you're going. You can see yourself in the not too distant future doing exactly what you want, knowing that each step you're taking now is getting you closer to your goal. If you knew exactly what to do to get you from where you are now to the lifestyle you'd like to have, wouldn't you do it? So, mistake number 3 is trying to cope on your own and with only the skills you've currently got, hoping that something's going to change. Einstein said, "We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them." He wasn't daft. He probably had a point. So how does anyone solve problems and get better at stuff? By getting expert help and learning new skills. That's how. Take Andy Murray. He's quite good at what he does. No kidding. Centre court, Wimbledon, tennis skills to die for. He's so much better at tennis than I am that it's tempting to think of him as some sort of a god. But let's have a look at how he got to where he is now. Well, first of all, he had the good fortune to be born into a tennis family. So from a very early age, you'd find him wielding a bat and smacking a ball over a net. It was as commonplace to him as learning to walk or read. His family made sure he had the right equipment, access to tennis courts, and of course, coaching. Tennis is one of those things like golf or playing the piano, where you really need to be taught, and if you're not, and make it up as you go along, you're very unlikely to become a champion. Now that's fine if you're playing for fun, and there are a lot of talented people who make a good fist of it. You don't need to have piano lessons to enjoy yourself. But don't tell me that the people right at the top of their game haven't had coaching. Of course, because he's got such an early start on the rest of us, Andy Murray got years of practice in before we even thought about it. But you can imagine, can't you, if he hadn't had somebody by his side to correct his grip, his posture, his swing, his strategy and mindset, any practicing he was doing would also have made him more expert at all his bad habits too, which would have got in the way of further progress. Look, my brother is a tennis coach. He coached Tim Henman all those years ago and coaches Sir Richard Branson. Yes, on the islands around his home in the Virgin Islands. Nice gig. Now, I wasn't half bad at it myself in my day. I was captain of the tennis team at school and thought I pretty much knew what I was doing. We're going back a bit now, you know. The double-handed backhand, so commonplace these days, was just coming into fashion. I have to tell you, there was nothing whatsoever wrong with my original single-handed backhand, and so I was a bit annoyed when my brother taught me how to do a double-handed backhand. Annoyed, because at first I found it confusing, because I was attempting to do something in a new way, and I wasn't very good at it. Yet. And remember, there didn't appear to me to be anything wrong with the backhand I already had. But my goodness me, over the several decades since, I've got lazy and my tennis has gone to pot. But you should see my double-handed backhand. It turned out to be my very most consistent shot. I still got it. And if my tennis coaching brother hadn't stepped in and interfered, quite frankly, my backhand now would be just as inconsistent and unreliable as every other shot. Thank goodness for his coaching. Problem number 3 is continuing to do things the same way, praying for a different outcome. Fix number 3? What's fix number 3? It's me. I am. Seriously. Get help. Learn to do things differently, not a little faster or a little harder, but exponentially better. Listen, there were certain aspects of my business that were driving me nuts for years. It seemed that no matter what I tried, I kept coming up against the same old problem, which was still holding back that part of my business. If you'd asked me, I would have told you I'd tried everything. But an opportunity came up that sounded as though it might be that leg up I needed in that part of my business. And the more I found out about it, the more excited I got. Was it worth inconveniencing my family and friends with whom we'd arranged to spend the Henley Regatta weekend? Was it okay to leave them to party while I spent 2 days in a conference room in London finding out if I'd made a good decision? Short answer? Hell yes. During those 2 days, and thanks to a good coach, it became extraordinarily clear exactly why this area of my business was struggling, and it also became crystal clear exactly what I needed to do about it. And unlike all the other business advice I'd ever taken, it wasn't about a little tweak here and a little tweak there, a bit more time on this and a bit more time on that, yet more work here and more work there. It was the polar opposite. I saw for myself and for the first time that I could drop 95% of my efforts and concentrate instead on a particular 5%. I spent the weekend thinking about all the things I was already doing, all the effort and stress, hoping to break through. And every time something on my original to-do list popped into my head, with not a little relief, I was able to simply dismiss it. I don't need to do it now. Wow, what a relief. To many people around me, people incidentally who already could see that I'd been banging my head against a wall for years, what I discovered this weekend was blindingly obvious. How ironic I help other people to wake up to the reality of their endeavours and find an easier and more effective way to do things, and there I was, failing to do so myself. Duh. But the insight, though late in the day, hit me like a ton of bricks this particular weekend. I found it gave me crystal clear appreciation of what needed to be done, and perhaps for me, more importantly, what needed to be left alone. It gave me laser-sharp focus to attend to those things that needed to be done, so that over the next 4 days, just 4 days, and that included interruptions, I was able to fully implement that 5% I mentioned, because now I had time to stop fussing over the unnecessary 95%. And as usual, it took someone on the outside for me to make that paradigm shift. We all need outside insight. And it's magically transformed that part of my business, not made it slightly better or more bearable or a little more successful, a complete and utter transformation, and boy does that feel good. And that's what I want for you too. I want that clarity, focus and success for you. I want you to feel that you're on top of your game, which after all is where you should be, isn't it? And so, because you've attended this webinar, I'm going to make you a seriously brilliant offer. You'll stop making the 3 biggest mistakes most people in your business are making and instead begin to race ahead. Because I know how to help you find out how your brain learns fastest. I know how to keep the information you've learned in your head permanently. And as Michael Caine famously never said, not a lot of people know that. I know how to help you master your psychology so those little niggling insecurities, procrastination, doubts, fears don't get in the way of you achieving your goals, so you get stuff done and become known for making stuff happen. Won't it be great to have other people looking to you to see how the heck you did it? And I know how to help you develop your own step-by-step, ambitious, inspiring, motivating plan that above all else is absolutely doable and by you, so that as well as your final destination, you enjoy the journey too. Life's too short not to start living it right now. So what about that seriously brilliant offer I promised? It's my gift to you. It won't cost you any money, just 30 minutes of your time. And I promise not to try and sell you anything. That's how important it is to me that you turn things around. Your Fast Track to Business Success Breakthrough Call. In your 30-minute Fast Track Breakthrough session with me, you'll get crystal clear on what needs to be in place and by when. You'll uncover hidden challenges that might thwart your success. You'll take away a bespoke, inspiring, actionable Fast Track plan. It's time to book your call. I have only a limited number of spots available. There are hundreds of people watching this webinar, so if you click the link and it doesn't work, that means all the spots are already taken, so be quick. Click on the button below straight away and grab your Fast Track to Business Success Breakthrough Call with me. Thank you.